Okay, this is Accounting 1, Chapter 11, Section 3. In this section, we're going to be posting from journals to a general ledger. This is very similar to what we did in Chapter 4, and it's also very similar to posting into the accounts payable and accounts receivable subsidiary ledgers. When we are doing our accounting books, every general journal or every general account is going to have a ledger page in the book, just like the accounts payable and accounts receivable had a subsidiary ledger in their appropriate books. When we have filled up an entire page, depending on how many lines there are, we have to open a new page. To do that, we begin by writing the account name. In this case, it's cash. We write the account number. We're going to write the date. We're going to write in the item column balance. This is the only time we'll really ever use the item column on the ledger sheets. We're going to put the post reference because this isn't really coming from any place other than the previous cash page. We're just going to put a check mark. And because cash is an asset, it has a normal debit balance, so we're going to be recording this in the debit balance column. And of course, that's where this should have been the final number in the debit balance column from the previous page. Okay, we're going to post from the general amount columns. So these are our general amount columns of our cash payments journal to the general ledger. So this is, remember, we have our special account columns such as accounts payable, our purchases discount, and our cash. Those we will only post the special ones at the end of the month, but everything in our general columns has to be posted individually. So this one, if we look here, it is for purchases, so we turn to the purchases ledger page. We're going to begin by writing the date, which is the 7th. We're going to write the post reference number. Where did we get the information from? It's cash payment, so it's CP21. Step number 3, we're going to write the debit amount. This is a general debit of $600, so we're going to write 600 in the debit column. Step number 4, we have to find our new balance. Because this is a debit and we had a debit balance, we're going to add. Remember that we will add if they are alike, and we will subtract if they are opposite. So in this case, we're going to add 600 to our previous debit balance. And finally, number 5, the last thing we always do is we will write the general ledger account number of 5,110 onto our cash payments journal in the post reference column. 2 reasons why we do this again is so that we know where this information went, and also so that if we get sidetracked in the middle, the phone rings, we go to lunch, whatever happens, we know that next time we come back where we left off and we're not confused. Okay, that was posting one of the columns. Now we're going to post a debit entry from a general journal to a general ledger. So that was cash payments journal. This is a general journal. Remember, this is what your general journal looks like. This is where we record things that are not, does not go in the purchases, does not go in sales, does not go in cash payments. The general is for everything else. This is where we record returned merchandise, or if we bought supplies on account. It looks like for this one, we are buying store supplies on account from Golf Craft Supply. So we're going to be recording the supplies store. So we turn to the supplies store ledger page. Again, we start with the date, which is the 6th. It's just basic copying. Where did we get the information from? We got it from journal, so it's a G11. We write the amount. This line is drawn in the wrong spot. It's actually a debit that we're recording because the debit is on the same line as the supplies store. So this is a debit of $210 to debit of $210. Step number 4, we have to find our new balance. Because we already had a debit balance and this is another debit, we add the two. We're adding the alike numbers, debit plus a debit, to get a new debit balance. We now know that we have bought $6,138 worth of supplies in this period. Step number 5 is always our final step. where we come back up here and we're going to write the general ledger number in the account. General ledger account number, the 1,150, goes in our post reference. Now we're going to post a credit from the general journal to the general ledger. So what we're doing this time is just posting the second half of this transaction. We're going to begin by going to accounts payable ledger. We're going to write the date. Where did we get the information from? It was from journal page 11. This is in the credit column with the accounts payable line, so this goes in the credit here. We had a credit balance, meaning that we owed this much money, but now we have charged another $210. So we now owe $13,194. A credit and a credit we add because they are the same. That is step number 4. Step number 5, we're going to write in the general ledger account number. Last step always is to take this account number, put it up here in the post reference. Now we have already done golf craft supply. We did that in the previous section. Typically, if you were an accountant, what you would probably do is just come straight down the page. Anyways, if I was the accountant for this company, I'd come straight down. I would do this line with the supplies for the store. Then I would go to the accounts payable ledger and do this one. And then I would go to golf craft supply and do this one so that I stayed in order. A couple things to remember, that the separate amounts listed in the special account columns of our cash payments journal are not posted individually. So if I go back to our cash payments journal here, remember these special accounts will not be posted individually. They are only posted as totals at the end of the month, and that's what we will be working on tomorrow. When you are doing accounting, accuracy is very important. You need to make sure you're following the proper sequence of steps for posting to increase the accuracy of your task. That means be sure that you're putting your post reference up here as your very last thing you do. Okay, let's do the audit your understanding questions. Number 1, which amounts in the general journal are posted individually? Go to a general journal. Here's a general journal page. Which amounts are posted individually? Anything that is a general debit or general credit. So on the general journal, both the debit and credit columns are posted individually. If you're in the cash payments journal, the ones that are posted individually are the general debit and the general credit columns only. Question number 2. List the 5 steps for posting to the general ledger account. These are pretty much the same no matter how we're doing it. Step number 1 is always to write the date. Step number 2, we're going to write the reference or the page number and the journal where the information is coming from. Step number 3, we're going to write in either the debit or the credit amount, depending on what's up here, whether it's a debit or credit. Step number 4, we're going to find our new balance. Remember, if they are the same, we add. If they're opposite, we subtract. So a debit plus a debit, a credit plus a credit, a debit minus a credit, or a credit minus a debit. If you are subtracting, the answer will always go in whichever one was the biggest. And step number 5 is always to write the general ledger account number back up here so that we know we are done with that transaction. Okay, now we're ready to do work together for 11.3.